with COVID, I think we need to see our leaders have a roadmap out of here, and in particular the state premiers. My fear is, or I think the real reason why they don't have a roadmap out of here is that they know sooner or later they're going to have to face the day where they open up. And, you know, I look back on some commentary by Professor Ian Fraser from University of Queensland last year, where he said that we're going to have to let COVID run its course. He said it was going to be very difficult to get a vaccine for an upper respiratory tract infection. They'd never found one. And I keep coming back to that. I just think to myself, sooner or later, there's no substitute for herd immunity. And, you know, we locked down for 2 weeks last year. I thought it was a bit over the top then. Little did I know just how much further that would go. Yeah. So that we'd have enough beds and ICU units and all the rest of it. Well, it's time to bite the bullet and let us get on with it in regards to that as well.
The bureaucracy in Queensland, Gerard Rennick, is piling on these two people who had the audacity to drive 1,800 kilometres up through the Newell Highway through Gundawindi and onto the Sunshine Coast. Selfish, all these things. The big pile on these two people. And maybe they are, all of those things are true, but, you know, only 900 of your constituents rushed for a vaccination on the Sunshine Coast yesterday, and they're hoping 1,200 tomorrow will go for it. It's not like everyone's in a mad panic to get this, but the bureaucracy seems more miffed that no one applied for permission to come to Queensland. I mean, the COVID bureaucracy, they have this tyranny about them, Gerard Rennick. We've got to get our freedom back.
Yeah, exactly right, Gary. And I've often said that it's the communists within our own bureaucracy that we have to be afraid of. And I think the last 18 months has shown just how out of control they've become. Yeah. And I mean, look, there's other departments I could talk about, but, you know, the words used by, I think it was Brett Sutton down in Victoria last week, where he described it as a beast and it had to be run into the ground, was just awful language, totally overreactive, you know, a total overreaction and basically creating fear and hysteria. And what worries me with this COVID outbreak is that we're normalising paranoid behaviour, and we need to wind all that back. And it's going to be very, very difficult because, you know, the long march to the left, they never, you know, retreat. And unfortunately, you know, the right do, and we need to stop doing that. But I you know, look, and back to those issues with the vaccine, I totally agree that the information has been very confusing. I mean, the World Health Organisation, when COVID first came out, they said that, you know, it couldn't be transmitted person to person. Then they've said, you know, it wasn't made out of a laboratory. Now it turns out there was a good possibility that it was. Last April we shut down because there were going to be 80,000 people dying, according to Norman Swan from the ABC. Well, that number never happened. Then it was to flatten the curve. Now it was to eradicate the curve. When we finally reopened up here in Queensland, we were told that we were never going to shut down again. I think we went for about 2 or 3 months, had one outbreak, or not an outbreak, just one case in Brisbane, and Brisbane got shut down for 3 days. Then again, just before Easter, I think there were a couple, you know, 1 or 2 outbreaks, or not outbreaks, but cases, shut down again. Now, in regards to the way COVID is treated compared to the vaccine, I asked the Department of Health for the median age of COVID deaths in Australia. They came back and said the median age of COVID deaths in ICU was 86, and 91% of them had comorbidities. Right, so they're counting people who die with COVID as dying from COVID, and that's created a lot more fear and paranoia, I think, than what there needed to be. But on the other hand, they won't do the same for vaccines. So a TGA report came out 2 weeks ago, and it said that 200 people died after taking the vaccine, but that 3,000 people die every week, so we'd expect to see a certain number of deaths. Well, that may very well be true, but you can't have one standard for reporting COVID and another standard for reporting a vaccine, which, by the way, is only a probationary vaccine, number one. And number two, the Pfizer one mRNA vaccine, that's a therapeutic process that's never been used before. And even the AstraZeneca one doesn't use the traditional vaccine pathway. It uses a recombination of putting a spike protein in another vaccine and then inserting that into your body. So they're not the traditional vaccines that we're used to, whereby they're created in addition, then they're killed and then they're put into you. These are new pathways, and a lot of people are aware of that. And they're not happy about the fact that they haven't been told the truth about, as Bronwyn rightly pointed out before, between the risks of COVID, the risks of vaccine. I mean, they're inflating the risks of COVID, but they're not then they're trying to play down the vaccine risk.
Correct.
So that automatically creates fear and suspicion. And given that the backflipping in the last 12 months wasn't transmitted between people and so on, and now this latest with the Fauci blow up, it's not surprising that people are cynical.
Yeah, and justifiably so, because you see, you can only fool some of the people some of the time, if you know what I mean. Mark Twain talked about all of that, and it's true. It is absolutely true. And I'll give some cover to Greg Hunt, because all the information Greg Hunt is getting out of the expert body, which is dominated by state health officers and state health ministers who are telling Greg Hunt stuff. He's not jabbing anybody. He's not running a hospital. He's not doing anything. He's taking all of his data from them. It's just that I think state health ministers and indeed state chief health officers who've become rock stars in their own mind are all running around telling everybody all these things so that they keep their notoriety up. I mean,
can I just jump in there, if you don't mind, Gary? I do have a bit of an issue with Greg. I've personally lobbied Greg to make ivermectin available. As far as I'm concerned, there's been a lot of studies now, high-quality studies in the last 12 months that have shown it is effective. Ivermectin's been around that long, it's actually off patent.
Right.
So whether or not, just how effective it is, I can't say, but it's certainly got a safe record in the sense that, if it wasn't safe, it wouldn't have been around for 30 or 40 years. And I can't understand for the life of me, if we're trying to, get on top of COVID, why you wouldn't want to be using every tool in the toolbox to bring it under control. Now, if you've got a lot of people who are vaccine hesitant, but there's, and I know some of them are vaccine hesitant but are happy to take ivermectin, then if they get, see their doctor first and get it prescribed to them by their doctor who's happy to give it to them, why can't they take that? I mean, yet again, it breeds more cynicism when we're getting a vaccine that's under patent, so the pharmaceutical companies are making a lot of money from their new drugs, but yet there's an old drug that's been out there for a very long time that we're not allowed to use. So yet again, the people get cynical. So
yeah, indeed.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.